welcome to meeting number 29, the Standing Committee on Finance, pursuant to the order of reference of March 8, 2021. The committee is meeting to start the clause-by-clause study on Bill C-14, an act to implement certain provisions of the economic statement tabled in Parliament on November 30th, 2020, and other measures. Today's meeting is taking place in hybrid format, and pursuant to the House Order January 25, therefore members are attending in person in the room and remotely using the Zoom application. The proceedings will be made available via the House of Commons website, and the webcast, so that you know, only covers the person that is speaking rather than the committee as a whole. So with that, first of all, I want to thank all the witnesses for coming to assist with us in the clause-by-clause study. I know we have witnesses here from the Department of Employment and Social Development, from the Department of Finance, from the Department of Health, and from the Department of Western Economic Diversification. So with that, we will go to the clause-by-clause study, and we will on Bill C-14. And so members, keep in mind, if you have any questions on any of these clauses as we're going through, just raise them, and the appropriate witness from the various departments will answer. Find my notes here. So we'll start with clause 2. Any discussion on clause 2? Shall clause 2 carry?
On division.
On division. Carried on division. Then turning to clause 3. Any discussion on clause 3? Shall clause 3 carry on division?
On division.
Clause 4. Any discussion on clause 4? Shall clause 4 carry on division?
On division.
On division. Clause 5. There's no amendments to clause 5 either. Any discussion? Shall clause 5 carry on division?
On division.
On division. There's an amendment by the NDP, NDP 1, on clause 6. Go ahead, Peter, you will want to move that.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Yes, I move the amendment, and members of the committee will recall back on November 24th, the House of Commons voted unanimously to call on the government to extend the moratorium on paying student loans. So we have a moratorium currently on interest, but not on the actual payment of student loans. What this amendment and the NDP 2 and NDP 3 would do is actually amend the legislation so that the loan repayment moratorium is extended. This is what the House called for. All of us did on November 24th. We know that students are going through a profound financial crisis, both in terms of continuing to try to maintain their studies, but also often trying to get work to pay for those studies is difficult. The supports are not in place, and so I think that's why all members of the House of Commons on November 24th voted to extend this moratorium. And it's the missing aspect of Bill C-14. It's something that simply needs to be corrected, I believe. When we look at the House motion, when we look at the situation that students are finding themselves in, this is simply a way of correcting that oversight. The interest payment moratorium, of course, is welcome, but when students are having to pay back their loans at a time of great financial crisis, in the midst of a pandemic with the third wave coming, it makes sense for us to improve this legislation. And so that's what I'm proposing.
And I expect you're expecting this, Peter, but I will have to rule the amendment inadmissible because it requires a royal recommendation. I'll explain why. Part 2 of Bill C-14 seeks to amend the Canada Student Loans Act to temporarily suspend interest and interest payments with respect to guaranteed student loans during the period that begins on April 1, 2021 and ends on March 31st, 2022. The amendment attempts to suspend interest and interest payments by a borrower for an indeterminate period of time that begins on April 1, 2021. Therefore, expending the time, the government would assume the payment of interest to the lender, which would result in increasing payments from the Consolidated Revenue Fund. As House of Commons Procedure and Practice, 3rd edition states on page 772, quote, since an amendment may not infringe upon the financial initiative of the Crown, it is inadmissible if it imposes a charge on the public treasury or if it extends the objects or purposes or relaxes the conditions and qualifications specified in the royal recommendation. End of quote. So, in my opinion, the amendment as proposed requires a royal recommendation since it does impose a new charge in the Treasury. Therefore, rule the amendment inadmissible.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You're absolutely right to say I did expect that, and I'll be challenging your ruling. I would suggest that it's up to the committee, and opposition members may choose to override a committee the ruling of the chair. On the basis, I would suggest that the House of Commons motion that was adopted on November 24th by all members provided a very clear guideline as to where the government's legislation should have gone. So this oversight needs to be corrected. The government withholding a royal recommendation is a matter of political choice, and the government can choose to provide a royal recommendation if this committee overrides the chair's decision and includes that as part of the amended legislation that's brought forward to the House of Commons. So members, because we're in a minority parliament, members have the sovereign right to override a chair's decision. I think there is a solid basis on which to do that, given that we have had a House of Commons motion that was adopted by all members of Parliament. And this legislation, of course, should be amended so it reflects the clear will of members of the House of Commons from all parties on November 24th. So I will challenge the chair on that basis.
All right. Then on the challenge to the chair's ruling, Mr. Clerk, could you call the vote?
The question is, shall the decision of the chair be sustained? So if members wish to agree with the chair, they vote yes. If members are against the chair's decision, they vote no. Shall the decision of the chair be sustained? Ms. Derwitz.
Yes.
Mr. Fragiscatos.
Yes.
Mr. Sorbera.
Yes.
Ms. Koutrakis.
Yes.
Mr. McLeod.
Yes.
Mr. Falk.
Yes.
Mr. Fast.
Yes.
Ms. Jansen.
Yes.
It worked, okay. Mr. Kelly.
Yes.
Monsieur Sainte-Marie.
No.
Mr. Julian.
No.
Yeas pour 9, nays contre 2.
So the ruling is sustained. Then on clause 6, is there any discussion or any question anybody wants to raise with officials? Okay. Shall clause 6 carry? On division? On division. Clause 7, Peter, you have an amendment there as well, NDP 2, if you want to move it.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I have gotten a clear view of the committee's will, so I will add to my initial comments for clause 6, were amendments to the Canada Student Loans Act. This is regarding amendments to the Canada Student Financial Assistance Act. I would implore committee members to both override a chair's ruling on royal recommendation, but also vote in favor of this amendment, because students are now being forced to pay for student loans because the government has ignored the all-party resolution that was adopted unanimously on November 24th. Let's look at this picture. Students who are crippled by debt, who are paying, trying to pay back their loan at the same time as they're struggling often to get their families through the pandemic and put food on the table. This is something that simply doesn't mesh, I think, with the fairness and equity that we want to see in this country. And that's why I'm proposing this amendment to the Canada Student Financial Act to put in place that moratorium through the pandemic, so students are not paying back the government loan when they should be putting food on the table.
Thank you, Peter. My ruling, as you would suspect, is the same as on NDP 1. I'll not go through the long explanation other than to say that this amendment basically seeks to achieve the same goal as the NDP 1, but for, in this case, the Canada Student Financial Assistance Act. And it has the same issue concerning the requirement for a royal recommendation, because it would mean spending more money. Therefore, I do rule the amendment inadmissible.
And thank you, Mr. Chair. And by the same measure, I will challenge your ruling. The House of Commons has clearly stated that where Liberals and Conservatives were part of that motion being adopted unanimously, students should not be forced to pay back their student loan in the midst of a pandemic. So I challenge your ruling with all the great respect that I have for you as chair.
But that is entirely your right. So we will go to the clerk for a vote on the chair's ruling.
The question is, shall the decision of the chair be sustained? Ms. Derowitz.
Yes.
Mr. Fragiscatos.
Yes.
Mr. Sorbara.
Yes.
Ms. Katrakis.
Yes.
Mr. McLeod.
Yes.
Mr. Falk.
Yes.
Mr. Fast.
Yes.
Ms. Jansen.
Yes.
Yes.
Mr. Kelly.
Yes.
Monsieur Sainte-Marie.
Non.
Monsieur Julien.
No.
Yeas pour 9, nays contre 2.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. The chair's ruling is sustained. Then shall clause 7 carry on division?
On division.
On division. Going then to clause 8, NDP 3. Peter?
Thanks very much, Mr. Chair. What this would do is amend the Apprenticeship Loans Act so that there is a loan repayment moratorium. You'll recall, Mr. Chair, that at the beginning of this pandemic, the government, with all party support, put in place a moratorium on student debt payments. That moratorium ended, and now students are struggling, and apprentices apprenticeship people in apprenticeship training programs are now struggling to pay for their student loans at the same time as they're trying to put food on the table, keep a roof over their head. There is a profound indication of unfairness to that. And so in light of the November 24th motion adopted unanimously that included apprenticeship loans, I would move this amendment that would ensure that there's a moratorium for all of those in apprenticeship programs across the country on having to repay their student loans during this pandemic.
Thank you, Mr. Julian. I will have to rule the same as I ruled on the previous NDP 1 and NDP 2. And I do know this relates to the Apprentice Loans Act, but it is the same issue concerning a requirement for a royal recommendation that can only come from the government or the ministry. Therefore, I rule the amendment inadmissible as well.
Well, with respect, Mr. Chair, I will challenge that ruling. We need apprenticeship training. We need the apprenticeship programs across the country to continue. That's very difficult when people are trying to pay back their loans at the same time as they're trying to get through their programs, at the same time as they're trying to put their food on the table. And again, this is very much in opposition to what was adopted by all-party agreement on November 24th. Calling on the government to extend the moratorium on student loan payment.
Okay, thank you, Peter. Then going to Mr. Clerk, a challenge to the chair.
The question is,
The
shall
chair's
the
ruling.
chair's decision be sustained? Ms. Derwitz,
Yes.
Mr. Fragiskatos,
Yes.
Mr. Sorbara,
Yes.
Ms. Katrakis,
Yes.
Mr. McLeod,
Yes.
Mr. Falk,
Yes.
Mr. Fast,
Yes.
Ms. Jansen,
Yes.
Mr. Kelly,
Yes.
Monsieur Sainte-Marie,
No.
Mr. Julian.
No.
Yeas pour 9, 9, nays contre 2, 2.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. Then the chair's ruling is sustained. Is there any questions to officials on Clause 8? Anybody have anything they want to raise with officials that are here to answer questions? All right. Shall Clause 8 carry on division? On division. Clause 9, is there any discussion with officials on Clause 9? We're into the Food and Drugs Act, Part 5. Any questions to officials there? Okay, then shall Clause 9 carry on division? On division?
Oui.
Oui. Clause 10, still dealing with Part 5. Any discussion to officials on Clause 10? It's for regulated products manufactured solely for export. Okay, no discussion. Shall Clause 10 carry?
Oui.
On division?
Oui.
Clause 11, still with Part 5. Clause 11, any discussion? Shall Clause 11 carry on division?
Oui.
On division. Clause 12, we're into Part 6 and payments. Any discussion with officials? Shall Clause 12 carry on division?
Oui.
On division. Clause 13, still on payments. Any discussion? Just yell if there is. Shall Clause 13 carry on division?
Oui.
On division. Clause 14. Shall Clause 14 carry on division?
Oui.
On division. So we're now to Clause 15, and Mr. Fast, you have an amendment here. The floor is yours.
I do. Thank you, Mr. Chair. And just for the record, I'd like to read that into the record.
Yep.
It's that Bill C-14 in Clause 15 be amended by replacing line 6 on page 8 with the following. Must not at any time exceed $1,611 billion. And I don't believe that requires a royal recommendation. Did you want me to make a few comments about that now, or do you want to rule?
It's allowable because it's talking reducing money there. Mr. Fast, the floor is yours. Make your arguments.
Okay, thanks, Chair. And let me be very clear. We support the programs and the benefits which Bill C-14 is delivering for Canadians. Let there be no doubt about that. And yet I remind members that there are still millions of Canadians that have been left behind, including the most heavily impacted industries like tourism and hospitality and airlines and charities, and a host of small and medium-sized industries, which were promised targeted sector-specific support, but haven't received it. Now, C-14, while helpful, does not in any way address these thousands of SMEs that have fallen through the cracks and have either closed up shop or are struggling to survive. So obviously, we encourage the government to provide this support. Now, the one element of C-14 that we cannot support is the government's attempt to increase our country's debt ceiling by a massive and unprecedented and unwarranted amount of $663 billion. This amount goes far beyond the government's current borrowing needs. Indeed, the government's already built in an undefined contingency fund of $87 billion. And then on top of that, they've set aside another undefined $100 billion of stimulus funding. And when asked what this money might be spent on, the finance minister really refused to say. And then on top of that, the government has added another $220 billion without saying what this money might be used for. And when asked about this, the minister effectively said, don't worry, trust us. There's no reason to believe that we'd actually use that borrowing authority.
Point of order, Mr. Chair.
What's your point of order, Mr. Fragiskatis?
Mr. Fast is recalling a conversation that happened a few weeks ago at committee between him and Minister Freeland, but I don't remember the conversation going that way. And since he's reading into the record won't be accurate. That's my concern.
I think that's a point of debate, not a point of order. Go ahead, Mr. Fast.
So I'll go back. So when asked about the $220 billion on top of all of that, in terms of unallocated spending, the minister effectively said, don't worry, trust us. There's no reason to believe that we would actually use that borrowing authority. Now, that's pretty rich since this government blew through $200 billion and through the current debt ceiling in less than 3 years. So, Mr. Chair, the government's request for an increase to its debt ceiling to $1.83 trillion is excessive. Accordingly, our amendment does the reasonable thing and reduces the debt ceiling request by $220 billion to $1.61 trillion. And this still leaves the government with a contingency of $87 billion, a $100 billion stimulus fund, which as yet remains undefined, and incorporates the exempted borrowing that was exercised during the pandemic. So I encourage all of my colleagues here at committee to do the reasonable thing and support this amendment.
Okay, thank you. The floor is open for discussion, and I remind folks again that there is officials here from 4 departments, I guess Department of Finance and this one, that if you have any questions to them, we've got ample time to put questions and take answers. I have Mr. Julian first. Mr. Julian?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm intrigued by this amendment, and we'll be listening very carefully to the discussion through the course of the committee. My concern has been all along, Mr. Chair, as you well know, that there's been no provision for the revenue side. When we're talking about expanding the debt ceiling, we have not put in place any wealth taxes, unlike other countries that have done so. There's no efforts been made to stop the hemorrhaging of money going offshore. The Parliamentary Budgetary Officer has evaluated that at over $25 billion every year, which means over the last decade, $250 billion has gone to overseas tax havens. We are not putting in place any sort of the measures that we had in the Second World War on revenue side. For example, what we had was an excess profits tax that was 75% of excess profits. Through the Second World War, at the end of the war effort, it was at 100%. And so there were measures taken from our past that actually balanced out revenues and expenditures, even in a situation like the war effort, where very clearly there were increased expenditures that were called for. And so I decry the government's lack of effort to actually take on the revenue side of the equation, so that the debt ceiling is not something that had to be raised. We've seen Canada's billionaires increase their wealth over this pandemic by over $60 billion. That didn't happen in the Second World War. Measures were taken to avoid that kind of intense profiteering. We have a whole sectors like the web giants that don't pay any tax at all. And we have not seen the kind of action that needs to be taken to tackle overseas tax havens and to put in place a wealth tax that would actually help to make sure that resources are available for Canadians through this pandemic and in the rebuilding that must surely follow. So I'm intrigued by the amendment, and I look forward to the debate. But I think that is a major weakness in the fall economic statement, a weakness, of course, in Bill C-14, and ultimately would be a colossal failure in the budget that we're finally going to see now after 2 years on April 19th. If the government says billionaires can have a free ride, the banks with profits of over $40 billion don't have to pay their fair share of taxes, web giant companies that have profits in the billions of dollars don't have to pay anything at all. And we have also seen with the use of COVID funding, many companies using it, profitable corporations using it for dividends, executive bonuses, stock buybacks. There's something fundamentally wrong with that fiscal picture. And that's why I'm intrigued by Mr. Fast's motion. Mr. Fast and I don't agree on many things, but I am intrigued by his amendment and will be listening very carefully to the debate.
Monsieur le Président vous êtes en sourdine.
Mr. Chair, your mic is muted.
Before I go to Ms. Zerowitz is on next, I know the officials are here, and at committee several times now, there's been a lot of discussion around the borrowing cap and whether it is the right to borrow up to that cap. Is it equivalent to, I guess, spending at that level? So I'd ask somebody from Department of Finance or officials if they could come in and explain in layman's terms what the borrowing cap is, regardless whether it's at the 1.8 trillion or the 1.6. What's it really mean as compared to spending?
Chair, I can take this question. Nicholas Moreau from the Department of Finance. So basically, we did explain in the past where this number is coming from. It's the sum of the expected financial requirement for the next 3 years as presented in the fall economic statement of 2020. To this, we add the overall level of stock that already exists and the money that has been used so far to help fight against the COVID-19 crisis. When you look at the limit that we're proposing, it's different than providing basically, it's a borrowing limit. It's different than approving the spending. By that, I mean that granting borrowing authorities it's one thing, spending it's something else, because it needs to go through appropriation bills. It needs to go through different processes in order to be approved. For example, the next budget will propose spending a new program, and this will need to be voted. Here, by putting in place a new limit, it does not per se, it does not at all basically provide authorization to spend that money. It's just a limit on the capacity of the government to borrow money from the market.
Okay, thank you. I have on my list Ms. Zerowitz and then Mr. Fragiskatis. Julie.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair, and I want to thank Mr. Fast for his, I think, thoughtful explanation of what his worry is around this section. I think I'm just going to expand a little bit more on what Mr. Morneau was just talking to. For those who might be watching or would be interested in knowing, is if they go to the fall economic statement and go to page 141, one is able to see exactly how we end up with, I had to practice this earlier today, $1,831 billion figure. And so it's exactly what Mr. Morneau was alluding to. So it's the current borrowing cap with the emergency spending, some adjustments around the Canada mortgage bonds, and then what is expected to be borrowing until 2023, 2024. So I think it's laid out very well. And I appreciate Mr. Morneau very well articulating that there is a complete difference between a borrowing cap as well as spending. And I will have a question for officials in a second, but I want to make one more point, which is to Mr. Julian, who was talking about how the government hasn't presented the revenue side yet. And that is not indeed included in C14, but good news today is that our Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Finance has announced that we will be presenting our budget on Monday, April the 19th, and I think we'll be hearing quite a bit about the revenue side in addition to the overall budget and when our game plan is moving forward on that date. My question that I'm hoping maybe someone can make crystal clear over in our officials is, and I believe it was our parliamentary budget officer that said this, can you please confirm that should this pass, that this $1,831 billion borrowing authority, can you confirm, or can someone please confirm that Parliament still needs to approve government expenditures under this borrowing authority? If someone could just make that crystal clear, I'd be very grateful. Thank you.
Mr. Morneau or who? Mr. Morneau?
Yeah, I guess
Moreau.
Moreau, yeah,
So, sorry.
sorry.
I'm seeing an N in your name there, Mr. Moreau.
Yeah, you're not the first one. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, like I just said before, any new spending will need to be approved by Parliament. Like I said, this is a borrowing limit. It's only in order to provide the government to borrow that money in the market. The reason we're doing this is that in 2017, the government put in place the Borrowing Authority Act in order to increase transparency on the government borrowing. And basically, by setting a limit, we're basically coming in front of government at least every 3 years in order to make sure that it's been transparent, it's been presented what exactly will be the government market debt, the capacity to borrow basically in the market.
Okay, does that conclude your questioning, Ms. Zerowitz?
Yes, thank you so much, Mr. Chair.
Okay, then I have Mr. Pragiskatis next, and then Mr. St. Marie.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, colleagues. I would just say that we ought to think back to the testimony that was given by the Parliamentary Budget Officer last week, where the question was put to him about the debt to GDP ratio. And he said that it was in and around the range now of 50%, which admittedly is high. Certainly, in relative terms, it exceeds in significant ways what we saw prior to the pandemic. But it's a pandemic, and that necessitated emergency programs, which was bound to drive up the overall debt. But when we have a debt to GDP ratio, still, compared to other G7 countries, is quite healthy, quite strong. Compare, for example, Canada's debt to GDP ratio to the UK, to Germany, to the United States. All of those countries whose economies are considered by the vast majority of economists to be very strong still, have debt to GDP ratios that far exceed what exists in Canada at the present time. The other point I would make to ease the concern of Conservative colleagues is that we've been here before. In the early 2000s, Mr. Chair, as you know, the debt to GDP ratio was at about the same level where it is now, give or take a bit. And we were able to still see robust economic growth well into the 2000s. Of course, things did turn in 2008, but that's a different story. So I think these points need to be put onto the table to reflect what actually exists and provide context. And officials have already spoken to the distinction, a very important one, between borrowing authority and spending authority, Mr. Chair. So for that reason, I won't be supporting the amendment.
Thank you, Peter. Mr. Saint Marie.
Oui, merci, Monsieur le Président. Ben, d'abord, je tiens à rappeler que j'apprécie grandement l'apport.
First of all, I'd like to say how much I appreciate the work that is done by my Conservative colleagues at this committee and how much they've done since the last election. They've done a great deal to improve the situation. And I agree with the point that was brought up by my colleague Peter Julian from the NDP. You have to look at the revenue side as well. You can't just look at one side making speeches. But I do have to point out that, as Peter Fragaskatas dit, André Giroux appeared before the committee on C14, and he pointed out that it's not by increasing the ceiling, the spending ceiling, that you are actually going to be doing new spending. That's not going to affect it. Each new expenditure has to be voted on by Parliament. And my comment here is quite simply this. Yes, I agree with the ceiling. It's the tactic of the Republicans in the United States to attack. When they can't agree, their whole system grinds to a halt. No checks go out. Their officials can't go to work. So from my point of view, that's an irresponsible way of acting. That is why I will not vote in favor of this amendment, despite the fact supporting this amendment would really mean a vote of non-confidence with the consequences we all know. Thank you.
Mr. Saint Marie, I have Mr. Julian followed by Ms. Jensen. Peter? You're muted, Peter.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I did have a question to our witnesses, and that is, do they have comparative figures of borrowing authorities in other, and I understand the systems are different in different countries, but borrowing authority as compared to the size of the economy in other major industrialized countries?
Go to Mr. Moreau.
Yeah, I can take this question. Thank you. As you said, there's no comparable measure that exists elsewhere in the world. The closest that exists is the United States. They do have a debt ceiling. It's different than a limit, because in our case, if we were to reach the limit, we're still able to reissue the debt that's already in circulation, and also the debt limit that exists in Canada compared to the ceiling in the US. Of course, the ceiling in the US is much higher because they do have a much higher debt to GDP ratio, a higher debt in circulation. I think the US, it's close to twofold what we have in terms of debt as a share of GDP when we compare Canada to the US. So the closest one will be the US, but in terms of level, it will be much, much higher in the US because they do have a higher debt level right now.
Back to you, Peter.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. But I just want to say that I listened very closely to Mr. Fast and also to Mr. St. Marie and my government colleagues. I am going to vote against the amendment after having heard all the arguments that were presented here today.
Followed by Mr. Fast.
Which microphone should I use? This one?
You're muted, Tamara.
So the one on the computer? Not the one on the computer. Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Okay, so the numbers are massive, so massive that Ms. Zarowitz has to actually practice how to say the number, which is quite shocking, should be shocking for Canadians. Now, Mr. Moreau, I thought maybe you might be able to help me better understand this. So we're asking for this enormous increase credit limit because we have already spent it? Or are we increasing our credit limit so dramatically, although we absolutely have no need of it? Is it one or the other?
Mr. Moreau.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Basically, as you know, we already have a limit in place of $1,168 billion. We have not reached that limit yet, but in terms of spending that already occurred, we need to look at the stock of debt, and we need to add to this what we've done under the extraordinary borrowing authority. That included $286 billion of spending that had been put in place. We did produce a report in October 2020 concerning those spending. So when we add those to the current limit, yes, we're already above. But as you know, like this is something that we want to change, and that's in C14. We want to add the extraordinary borrowing authority to the overall limit. So therefore, no. When you look at what we're requesting, we're looking at the expected spending for the next 3 years as not spending, financial requirement as presented in the fall economic statement. And to this, we're adding a prudence price factor of 5%. This is what we are asking for, and this is why the level is $1,831 billion.
Okay, sorry. So if I can just make sure I totally understand this. You're saying that we need this entire amount because we have already spent it and we plan to spend it over the next 3 years. We need the entire amount.
Just to be clear, this amount include a stock that already exists in the market, as well as expected financial requirement for the next 3 years.
And when you say expected financial requirements over the next 3 years, is that information that we're going to be receiving on the 19th of April in the budget?
The expectation are based on the forecast that have been produced in the fall economic statement, basically, and this is money that has not been spent yet. So basically, those are money that are expected to be spent in the future.
Okay, so sorry, my apologies. So you have mentioned that none of it can be spent without permission first. But we're making sure it's there because we know we're going to spend it anyway. So is that a correct way of explaining it?
We're asking for the authority to borrow and to be able to increase the debt in the future. So it's important that we have that clear authority to move forward in order to be able to put together a debt program moving ahead. We need to inform the market. We need to have the capacity to increase our debt in the future. But that money will still need to be approved through the budget, through other mechanisms like we've talked before. As we know, like it's mostly to Appropriation Act that money will be approved to be spent.
Just so we're clear, I guess back to St. Marie's point, the any spending would have to be approved by a vote in Parliament. That's correct, right? Okay.
Sorry, just one more. Just okay, trying to.
Tamara, go ahead.
So we're asking for money that we know that is planned to be spent over the next 3 years, but we have no permission yet to spend that money. But we're going to make sure that the money is in place anyways, correct?
What we want to make sure is we will have the authority to borrow that money if the decision is taken in order to be spending that money.
Okay, thank you. Then going to Mr. Fast, followed by Mr. Kelly. Ed?
Well, Mr. Chair, my colleague, Ms. Jansen, has put her finger on the real problem here. First, you table a budget. Then you ask for the borrowing authorities that match what your budget calls for. I've met with numerous economists since I was appointed critic, and I can tell you, they all agree that it is much more preferable to table a budget first than match your borrowing authority to that budget. So that's a big problem here. But also, and this is my final point, respectfully to Mr. Fragicato's point, this is not about debt to GDP ratio, because we know the finance minister has not done what her mandate let her instruct her to do, which is implement a fiscal anchor. Now, I know economists are all calling for there to be a fiscal anchor. They might not agree exactly on what that anchor should be, but it is absolutely critical for the minister to have some guidance, some rules by which her spending is governed. And here we have the minister coming forward, asking for the authority to borrow money when we don't know what her plan is. That budget should have been delivered before this debt ceiling increase was requested. That's my big problem, which is why we've got the amendment on the table. I believe it's the reasonable way of approaching it.
Thank you. I don't believe there was a question there. We are straying somewhat from the amendment, but I think that's fine. These issues need to be discussed. Mr. Kelly.
Thanks, and I'll be very specific to the debate that has taken place on the amendment. And I wanted to just comment on the issue that Gabriel St. Marie raised, and because it was also raised in an earlier panel by other witnesses and I think by committee members on the government side. And this is this false comparison with anything that has happened over the years in the long history in the United States of brinksmanship over funding the government. One of the beauties, one of the real strengths of the Westminster system is that those types of that type of government shutdown because of gridlock in among legislators just doesn't happen. The minute that a government cannot get authority to fund fund its expenses, that is dealt with through an immediate election. That's loss of confidence in of the government, and it would be referred immediately to election. So this isn't about brinksmanship over the ceiling. This is about setting an appropriate ceiling. And if one is to suggest that now is the time to add to set a ceiling that is at least $220 billion higher than the broadest, most worst case scenario, highest estimate of any possible borrowing figure, then if we were to accept that argument that we ought now to set it at 1.883, then one would really say, well, why not 2 trillion? Why not 5 trillion? Why even have a ceiling if the ceiling is going to far exceed any notion of spending that has yet been presented to Parliament? So I and for the reasons that my other colleagues have mentioned, I'm going to support the amendment. And but I wanted to be clear about that there's no equivalence or no comparison to be made over the long history of gridlocked government spending that have resulted in shutdowns in the United States. That's not a feature of the parliamentary system and the system that we have in Canada.
Okay, thank you. Oh, I see Mr. Fragickatos, perhaps the last speaker in this amendment. Mr. Fragickatos.
I won't belabor the point, Mr. Chair, but I think, it's an important debate. There's no question about it. And the reason that I focus on debt to GDP here is, as we all know, it's a key economic measure. in the view of most economists, it is the key measure when we're looking at debt issues. That's why I raise it. There's also the view of the International Monetary Fund, which I know my friends in the Conservative Party will be very fond of. They reviewed Canada's spending throughout COVID-19 and found the following. Now, let me put it on the record again to ease the concerns of Conservative colleagues who I care very much for. They said the following. Canada's response during the pandemic provided crucial support to the economy and the functioning of financial markets and helped protect lives and livelihoods. The report also remarks on the importance of avoiding premature withdrawal of policy support, and it welcomed Canada's adoption of fiscal guardrails. So on the whole, the IMF is very comfortable with where Canada is in economic terms. Again, this is not the Socialist International. This is the IMF. And if the IMF is good with it, then I'm pretty comfortable, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Fragascatas, and I believe Ms. Jansen is wanting back in the round. Go ahead, the floor is yours, Tamara.
I'm just very concerned about the way that this is being done. We have no budget, and we are being asked to approve a credit limit that's massively increased without knowing really where it's going. We've been told that we're going to be, reimagining the economy. And I assume that's why we're asking for so much money. But this is a pretty serious thing to ask us to say yes to this kind of borrowing when in actual fact, we have no idea what the plan is. So we have to be ensuring that Canadians and parliamentarians have the opportunity to actually debate things rather than saying, okay, approve it now. Don't worry, you'll get another chance later to, rubber stamp it. Then that's what I feel like this is going to do. It's just going to rubber stamp whatever is in the budget that we're going to finally see on the 19th.
And I believe Mr. Falk wants in. Ted?
Good, thank you, Mr. Chair. And I just want to reiterate some of the things my colleagues have been saying. It seems to me that this amendment would do what the government is asking to do in meeting its obligations for the commitments that it's already made. But what it wouldn't do is it wouldn't create that $300 billion cushion that the government is looking for. And it seems to me that that would be like putting the cart before the horse. We were told earlier today by the Deputy Prime Minister we can expect a budget on April the 19th. And it would make a lot more sense to me if once that budget is presented, if there needs to be an increase in borrowing authority at that time, that the request comes through the budget process and that it's coupled together with what the budget is presented as April the 19th. And I think that this amendment would also actually support the concerns of both the Bloc and the NDP, where they're concerned that there's been no address at all to the revenue aspect in our finances. And if we wait till April the 19th, we may realize that the increase that's being asked for in this current bill is not warranted, and that what we're presenting as an amendment is probably just fine. And maybe that's even going to be excessive once the government, as Mr. Zurowitz says, addresses the revenue side.
Okay, I believe we're ready to go to the vote. I expect you want a recorded vote on this. Do you, Mr. Fast?
I do.
Okay. Then on the CPC 1 amendment, Mr. Clerk, a recorded vote.
Ms. Derowitz,
I do not support this amendment.
Mr. Fragiscatos,
No.
Mr. Sorbara,
I do not support this amendment.
Ms. Katrakis,
I do not support this amendment.
Mr. McLeod,
Oh.
Mr. Falk,
Yes.
Mr. Fast,
Yes.
Ms. Jansen,
Yes.
Mr. Kelly,
Yes.
Monsieur Sainte-Marie,
Contre.
Mr. Julian,
Contre, opposé.
Yeas pour 4, 4, nays contre 7, 7.
Okay, the amendment is lost. Then shall clause 15 carry on division?
Oui.
On division?
Yes.
Recorded.
Oh, you want it recorded?
Yes, please.
Okay, all right. We'll go back and record it. So, okay, Mr. Clerk, could we have a recorded vote on clause 15?
Ms. Zarowitz,
Yes.
Mr. Fragiskatos,
Yes.
Mr. Sorbera,
Oui.
Ms. Katrakis,
Yes.
Mr. McLeod,
Yes.
Mr. Falk,
No.
Mr. Fast,
No.
Ms. Jansen,
No.
Mr. Kelly.
No.
Monsieur Sainte-Marie,
Pour.
Monsieur Julien.
Four.
Yeas pour 7, 7. Nays contre 4, 4.
Okay, the clause 15 is carried. Clause 16, is there any questions on that? We're still under the Borrowing Authority Act, Part 7. Any questions to officials? Shall clause 16 carry on division?
Yes.
On division. Clause 17, same section. Clause 17, any discussion? Questions? Shall clause 17 carry on division?
On division.
On division.
Clause 18, no discussion. Shall clause 18 carry on division? On division.
On division.
Clause 19, on the same section. Clause 19, shall it, any discussion? None. Shall clause 19 carry on division?
On division.
On division.
On division. Shall the schedule carry on division? On division.
On division.
Shall the short title carry on division?
On
On
division.
division.
Shall the title carry on division?
On division.
On division.
Shall the bill carry?
Recorded vote, please.
Recorded vote. Mr. Clerk, recorded vote on the bill.
Ms. Zarowitz,
Yes.
Mr. Fragiskatos,
Yes.
Mr. Sorbera,
Yes.
Ms. Katrakis,
Oui.
Mr. McLeod,
Yes.
Mr. Falk,
Opposed.
Mr. Fast,
Opposed.
Ms. Jansen,
No.
Mr. Kelly,
No.
Monsieur Sainte-Marie,
Oui.
Monsieur Julien.
Oui.
Yeas pour 7, 7. Nays contre 4, 4.
The bill is carried, and shall the chair report the bill to the House? Agreed? Agreed.
On division.
On division. Okay, that can look. That concludes Bill C-14, and Mr. Clerk, I think without amendments, we should be in a position to be able to table that in the House tomorrow if people can get that prepared overnight. Okay, we will table that tomorrow in the House. Want to thank officials for coming, as they have many times before this committee. So I thank the officials from all the departments that appeared today, and Mr. Moreau. Thank you for answering most of the questions. You did the heavy lifting today. So with that, we will adjourn. Meeting adjourned. Thank you all.
Hi.
Merci.
Merci.